Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the webinar, Music, Adolescence and Psychoanalysis, hosted by the Communication Committee, coordinator of the webinars, Mario Rupertus. Welcome to the speakers. Before introducing the webinar, I will provide you with some technical information on its running. Go, next. I'm Rosa Spagnolo. I'm the moderator of the webinar. I'm the chair. I'm an Italian psychoanalyst from Rome. And it's enough. I would like to go on. Okay, this is the webinar structure. After this really short presentation, Anna Cordioli will be the first one, then follow Massimo De Mari, Monica Bomba conclude. Then we have a little discussion among the speakers, and at the same time we collect in the Q&A your proposal, your questions, and then at the end of this little short discussion among the speakers, we have the Q&A answer from the speakers. Go. Please submit your questions from the Q&A section in the bottom Zoom bar below. Questions are anonymous. Panelists will receive the questions and will be able to answer them. You cannot interact directly with the speakers. Next. Automatic subtitles in English are available. Press the button, CC button in the bottom toolbar that says CC to enable them, English subtitles. Then, remember that this is the webinar this webinar is being recorded and will be uploaded to the IPA web page and YouTube. You will be sent a link to the recording in the days following the webinar, not immediately. Participants can only repeat interact through the Q&A. Chat and microphone functions are not available in the webinar format. You must be connected only with name and surname. Otherwise, you will be asked to leave the webinar. Next. So, before the speaker start, I wanted to say that we are all part of a group of 12 Italian psychoanalysts who have been working on this topic of music and adolescence for about 2 years. Last March, the group wrote a book about this topic. It's in Italian and part of the Note Garden collection produced by the Venice Center for Psychoanalysis. You can download it, this journal, this volume, for free at the link we provided. So Anna Cordioli speaks first. And Anna Cordioli works and lives in Padova. She's a psychologist, psychotherapist, psychoanalyst from the Italian Society. She's an IPA associate member and serves as the web and communication manager of the Center Veneto of Psychoanalysis and the editorial board of our web page, Italian web page for our society. And she is the manager of a lot of social media, and she is editorial member of a lot of journals. She's the head of the Center for Veneto for Psychoanalysis, the group Sex and Gender Diversity Studies group, and a member of the Italian Society for the same group. And she teaches in a lot of university. Next one, Massimo. Massimo De Mari is a psychiatrist, criminologist, psychoanalyst. He lives and works in Padova. He's a full member of the Italian Society and a member of the International Psychoanalytic Association. He's a member of the Italian Society of Criminology and a member of the Forensic Psychotherapy board, and the same group acts in the APF, is in the Committee of Psychoanalysis and Law for the IPA. He works in private practice and at the university he teaches forensic psychiatry. And I would like to say earned a conservatory degree in jazz music and played the music as semi-professionally. And he edited a book titled Between Psychoanalysis and Music. Next one, Monica. She is a child and adolescent psychiatrist, psychoanalyst from the Italian Society, couple therapist. She lives and works in Milano. She is editor-in-chief of the International Annual Journal Psychoanalytic Internationalis, different in English, is member of the IPA Communication Committee and for the same committee for the Milano Center. She's a teacher and supervisor for many schools on Bion's theory of thinking, childhood, adolescence, disease, and disorder. And she co-chaired a very different various group of psychoanalysts and participants in the formation of music and psychoanalysis. So we can start. I have, I think, another information. No, Augustine, we have, I think, other 2 slides of information.
We can share them at the end. Don't worry.
Okay. Okay. So just to say, next webinar, we can say this at the end of the webinar. Okay. Anna Cordioli, please, you can go.
Thank you, and hi to everybody. I will read to be able to be a little bit better with my English. In my introduction, I will try to highlight some of the many ideas that circulated with our study group, Knottgarden Musica. In particular, I will touch on themes explored in the articles by Cinzia Carnevale, Rosa Spagnolo, Guido Buffoli, and myself, Anna Cordioli. It is well known that the sound and the musical dimension of psychic life has never found a place within Freud's model of the mind, which is instead dominated by the visual and the representational. Psychoanalysis, in fact, was established without exploring the acoustic and the musical dimension of the subject, which has had very little space even in post-Freudian metapsychological theories. This traditional neglect is even a little paradoxical, given that psychoanalysis is a treatment based on words, which are a particular type of sound-based event. Barale and Minazzi proposed an interesting hypothesis on the historical and epistemological rationale behind Freud's exclusion of the sound dimension of his work. In their interpretation, Freud needed to differentiate the conceptual framework of psychoanalysis from that of neo-Kantian and proto-phenomenological philosophies, which had long placed musical phenomena at the center of the study of the psyche. In particular, as he was writing his Traumdeutung, Freud encountered the work of Theodor Lipps, a philosopher who had already written about the unconscious nature of psychic processes and dream work. There were several potential points or overlap with Freud's work. According to Lipps, the domain of sound shed light on both the development of representation and the general condition of psychic experience. According to Lipps, again, rhythm is the center element. Rhythm, in words, music, heartbeats, evoke a kind of internal consonance in the listener, which today we could call embodied simulation. For Lipps, this internal imitation of the other's rhythm is the basis of empathy. Interestingly, this is a very close to Gaddini's concept, although on an acoustic level. Lipps decides empathy as form of affective tuning between individuals, and he focused acoustic and musicality to be the most isomorphic channel to the process of mutual understanding. This statement may sound very familiar to contemporary psychoanalysts, but there is a misconception we should avoid. These theories consider only what we could address as the preconscious level. Freud was instead trying to conceptualize the unconscious. Perhaps to emphasize the difference between psychoanalysis and philosophies of consciousness, Freud argued for a visual and timeless dimension of the unconscious, thus he left the acoustic dimension unexplored. After the Second World War, many psychoanalysts took a greater interest in preconscious phenomena and even primitive state of mind. Right at that time, music found a new space for exploration in psychoanalysis, and by then we had acquired a deeper awareness of the existence of the unconscious. As early as Project for the Scientific Psychology, Freud discussed the mutual comprehension between infant and caregiver as a form of preverbal, representational communication. It was Freud himself who made us more attentive to the non-verbal and more aware of the need of receptive means which are closer to the condensed, synchronic nature of the unconscious. That communication, Verständigung, is after all an original internal tuning. Communication implies also the hypothesis of a persistence through life of unconscious communication, conceived as a basic condition for the possibility of human relations. The study of the sound tuning of communication is linked to the early life experiences. Anzieux called sound bath the experience of the child immersed in the preverbal, in a symbolic experiences deposited then in memory and body. The heartbeat, the rhythm of the breathing, prosody of the voices of the mother, tones, volume, the mewing of a cat, or background music. Even during session with adult patient in free-floating attention, it is sometimes possible to contact a fragment of the archaic sound bath. The analyst may notice regressive or archaic sound elements. This listening quality tap into the secret language of the non-verbal and allow the analyst's psyche to detect in the sensory sphere, like with sounds or the voices, echoes of this obscure idiom and the soundtrack of otherwise unrepresented unconscious effect. Di Benedetto discusses acoustic rêverie, which is that form of imagination specifically acoustic that contributes to the elaboration of the precursor of verbal language and which exists alongside the visual and narrative imagination privileged so far by psychoanalytic theory. Carnevali then wonders what sound tap into. Relational musicality reaches the most primitive effect and connects to them, reactivating what Mancha call the sound archive of transference. During analysis, one reaches primitive experiences of the self and remote event. A powerful transference can be activated, softening the rigidity of defenses and allowing emotional, sensual and sexual developmental movement to be resumed. This deep contact stir up nearly fossil aspects of the preverbal past that have not been listened for a long time. These sounds are able to resemble the archaeological fueros Freud speaks about in his well-known letter to Fliess. It is no coincidence that Freud ends this letter by saying saxa loquuntur, the stones will speak. With what voice, with what rhythm, and who's listening? What we try to reconnect is a deeper than word intimacy. The famous architect Juan y Pallasmaa designed physical spaces using the concept of acoustic intimacy. He nearly observed, the sense of sight implies exteriority, but sound creates an experience of interiority. I regard an object, but sound approaches me. The eyes reaches, but the ear receives. Sounds, thus, has active qualities. It comes close to us, it enters us. However, this also underscores the importance for the listener to be able to tolerate a receptive stance. To create a context of acoustic intimacy, the listener must be able to embrace their own receptiveness and even to overcome their anxiety of passivity. In the other end, Buffoli focuses his article on the intentionality of the voice. The analyst's attention should be on the rhythm, on the melody and the tone of the patient when they speak. The same care, however, should be given to the analyst's own voice. Buffoli emphasized that the importance of knowing how to properly deliver one's voice. He discusses pronunciation, emphasis, tone of voice. The analyst should be able to work on their own voice as if it were an instrument, being aware of the power of the sound that accompany words. A recent study noted that individuals in a dialogue tend to vocally tune into each other like musical instruments. As we can see, to assess a full acoustic rêverie, the analyst must be able to oscillate between oceanic element, passive, fusional, sympathetic, and subjectivating function, active, tuning, empathetic. In Spagnolo's work, a piece of music that appears in a session is listened to and approached as a dream. The analyst's ability to tune in their own listening does not depend on finding a perfect consonance with the other's contents. Furthermore, such a fusional proximity can be very distressing for adolescents who are engaged in a process of individuation. To escape the oceanic, Spagnolo points out one needs to get in touch with creativity. Musical creativity begins in intrauterine life, with the ability to respond to the sound and rhythms of the mothers and the body, as we saw. According to Spagnolo, this creative sound dialogue is reactivated in the session. Therefore, a piece of music can be used as a cat flap, which is a Bolognini concept, an interpsychic and intrapsychic passage of repressed or as yet unrepresented content. In this asset, the analyst is very careful that the patient finds or refines their own voice. Spagnolo and our patient work on the creation of a sound scaffolding of the relationship, where everybody has added a piece. And I'm going to the end. Noi observed that sound can evoke a reaction in the listener in a manner that is concordant and isomorphic with their deep-seated emotions, which is basically the hypothesis of Lips. However, sounds can evoke also discordant emotions that result from defensive activities triggered by the auditory stimulus. If the isomorphic mode refer to an imminent and almost symbiotic contact between sender and receiver, the reactive mode reflects a psyche actively responding and expanding differences. A child confronted by an unpleasant experience close their eyes and cover their ears. This, thus, open up a whole range of experiences that each person has excluded from auditory listening due to more or less massive defensive mechanism. This is an awareness that we have been able to mature only through the concept of unconscious. In my article, I mentioned the different sources that can cause these gaps in listening. These gaps in listening can have many sources, which come from archaic state of minds up to the most neurotic dynamics. The analyst's work is not only to be aware of the patient's form of the unheard, but also to explore their own forms of deafness. In my work in particular, I have explored certain types of gaps in listening in relation to the LGBTQ community. There is a habit to not hearing the emotion of minorities, and this has a dual function, said functions, to preserve the psyche from the fatigue of the uncanny and from the fatigue of confronting our reality with the ideal ego we think to fit in, to be good, empathic, accepting, open-minded. As with all psychoanalytic work, we begin by wondering what the other does not hear or cannot represent, and we end by wondering what we are not yet ready to hear from the other. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna Cordioli. Very, very interesting paper. So we are going to discuss later on with you. Now, Massimo De Mari, please, are you ready?
Yes, thank you. I try to share.
Perfect.
Is that okay?
Yes, it's okay, perfect.
Okay. Thank you, and thank you, the organizer, for inviting us. It's a pleasure and an honor to speak of our work. I will present my presentation and those ones by Francesco Onofri, Vittorio Gonella, and Paola Ferri. The original idea for this work stems from an apparently simple question. How has the relationship between adolescence and music changed over the last 50 years? And then, if music has changed like the world they live in, what emotions do today's teenagers experience with respect to the music they listen to? A simple question, not that simple, as we have been talking about it for 1 year. We took inspiration from many important psychoanalysts, often musicians themselves, who started thinking and writing on this topic before us. I will first quote Alexander Stein, a pianist and psychoanalyst, who observes, although we refer to it as a non-verbal art, music is a language considered in the context of psychic mechanism and verbalization processes, and can therefore be more appropriately termed non-linguistic. An auditory analogy of dreams, interpsychic listening and internal vocalization assemble elements of the mental function of the primary process through the evocation of sounds. The challenge for psychoanalysis is to understand the relationship between the formation of sounds, classified as music, and the meaning and emotional value they have for the individual. I've been talking with Francis Greer, who's a renowned organist, composer, but also trained analyst of the British Psychoanalytic Society about music and psychoanalysis, and he pointed out that both attempt to explore and express the inner world. Many years before, in 1989, Giovanna Giaconi, a former training analyst of the Italian Society of Psychoanalysis, wrote, "Every era has its own musical language. Rock and roll is a genre that in the form of hard rock has such a high and widespread listening index that it is a recognizable element among adolescents, while on the other end, it is predominantly unwelcome to adults. It is therefore an important element," she said, "as it represents a defensive barrier against intrusion or the projected ghost of intrusion. I am of the opinion, said Giaconia, that a trace of the child's hallucinated sphere of sound is recognizable in it, while the disrupted shouting sounds and drum solos belong to the order of the cry, which, born of pain, expresses anger and imperiously calls out to the mother. The lyrics offers a representation that the cry loads with affection, taking the metaphorical development of the word to its extreme limit. At this point, a double possibility opens up, one consisting of a reprise of the musical structure, albeit conceived in improvisation. Improvisation, it's a topic I've been thinking about for a long time. I think it's very, very close to psychoanalytic things. The other, characterized by the intoxicating abandonment to the power of the voice and the uncontrolled and overwhelming speed of the rhythm. In the one case, there is the effort to keep the relationship with the internal object thinkable even before the external one. In the other, the mental and bodily excitement overwhelms the object relationship in a confusing aggression. That was written many years ago, but it's still very, very updated. Something about the dissonant adolescent. I used this adjective and the double meaning, psychoanalytic and musical. Adolescence in particular constitutes a crossroad that confronts the individual with a passage of growth and personality development towards adulthood. The process of individualization in adolescence, Bloss points out in 1980, is accompanied by feelings of isolation, of loneliness, disorientation. The knowledge that childhood is irrevocably over, the stringent commitments are urgently needed, that individual existence itself as clear-cut limits creates a sense of pressure, fear, and panic. In the worst-case scenario, one may encounter a crisis, the outcome of which is entirely unpredictable and may lead, as we know, the adolescent to develop a significant psychic problem of various kinds, from neurosis to depression to psychosis, or to structure one's personality in a disharmonious, let's say, disharmonious manner. This disharmonious manner, we might call it a form of dissonance, often nuanced, that can escape observation even by those closest to them, what we call personality disorders, let's say. When the function of the superego is particularly weak or in check, it is at this stage that the adolescent ends up denying everything that is part of a social life regulated by ethical and behavioral norms, and may choose crime as an identifying model. We have many examples of how music can reflect such a troubled and conflicted inner world. At my time in the 70s, well, the punk music, nowadays, rap maybe. But let's go back to the 70s with the contribution of Francesco Onofri, who concentrated on punk music. Francesco highlights how punk music lends itself particularly well to transmitting the adolescent's expressive urgency and this natural propensity for experimentation and experiences that privilege expressive channels of a motor and sensorial, hence bodily type. The novelty lies not in the harmonic structure of the songs, but in the use made of the old rock repertoire. The young bands take this music and scramble it through their heart's content without any regard, arriving at a very violent and schematic form of rock and roll, 3 or 4 chords, but more often even 2 solos. Continuity and discontinuity at the same time, the new wine in all barrels, as Winnicott said in 1965. Francesco then focuses on aggression as a fundamental growth factor, functional to the psychic task of differentiation and self-definition, a dialectic between the true self and the false self, which places the human being, in particular the adolescent, in a condition of constant tension, often of conflict. We can say that punk has among its distinguished characteristics the ability to show the ugly and the evil through symbolic elements traceable in music, in the artist's modes of expression, and in the way the body is presented or represented, clothing, piercings, hair fashioned into colorful crests, and so on. Punk rejects success and popularity because they stifle this voice, but more important, because it is only by avoiding normalization. One can leave open the possibility that the psyche accomplishes, through art and cultural experiences, an integration of the ugly with the beautiful, inserting the dissonances we were talking before into a whole that can become not only tolerable, but also pleasing and aesthetically beautiful. Finally, taking this cue once again from Winnicott, Francesco defines punk as a happy artistic and musical expression of what he calls creative immaturity, understood as a universal psychic state or factor necessary for the growth and evolutionary transformations of the subject, as well as of society, and peculiar to adolescence. Quoting Winnicott in 1971, immaturity is a valuable part of the adolescent scene. In it are contained the most exciting features of creative thinking, a new and fresh feeling, ideas for new living. Now let's go to Vittorio Gonella contribute, which is particular, as we will see. He starts from the observation that rock, a young music genre born in the 50s, was the victim of a misunderstanding, that it was initially considered a form of entertainment, then a manifesto of the younger generations, but never an art form through which the artist expresses his or her subjectivity, something that was to happen more and more frequently from the end of the 60s onwards. The rock star is an artist capable of describing the young people listening and the characteristic of their generation, but the teenager described is often the artist himself, with his struggles and personal history. The time being spoken of is on not only historical and sociocultural, but is personal and biographical. In this case, Vittorio says, rock becomes the art of the subjective and the object of psychoanalytic listening. A listening that is no longer limited to the listening thing, to listen, stimulated at the moment the listener feels that the song describes him or her, but becomes an engaging feelings to feel of the various parts of the author's self, in particular of those traumatic areas that find in music an attempt at holding and containing them. Vittorio has concentrated particularly on the theme of trauma. in music. Vittorio analyzes also some debut records, considering them as true adolescent subjectivation processes in which the entire previous artistic and personal journey takes shape, and the rock star presents a calling card of the subsequent musical career, understood as his own adult life. He took into consideration some records and some artists, The Doors, King Crimson, Bruce Springsteen, Patti Smith, Nirvana, Cranberries, who allows us to recognize that our artistic creation can, in some cases, be a cohesive representation of the ideal of the self and the construction, like in Robert Fripp, Bruce Springsteen, Patti Smith, and in others, an attempt to give representation and elaboration to traumatic areas, like, as we know, Jim Morrison, Kurt Cobain, Dolores O'Riordan. Third works by young artists in which their adolescence is described in the lyrics and represented in the music above all. Finally, we will reflect with Paola about the tough survival of being young. She reflects on the fact that the music that young people listen to is perhaps very different from that of those who experienced adolescence at the dawn of rock in the 60s. For us, as we were adolescents, rock retains a purity and a saving expectation towards life that we adults have forgotten, carried away by the cynicism of social adaptation. A band like Rolling Stones, who descend from the culture but are still fully active today, can deliver an important baton to those entering the music scene today. Perhaps the rhythms of today teenagers seem to us monochrome and one tone, but they mark for them the time necessary for psychological birth through an artistic experience that expresses the corrosiveness of habit and the rhythmicity imposed by living in the present. Perhaps young generations, says Paula, live a more alienating time than ours, with less ideal projection on the future, with less hope for change in the world, which we have handed over to them violent and disfigured, as we know. Environmental disaster, corrupt leadership, a sense of emptiness and bewilderment are what they have to deal with, to deal with. The strong value of rock's transgressive and revolutionary message, diluted by a blue decadence, the soften the souls, administered in an excessive dose, leads to self-annihilation, as we see in the death of Brian Jones, but also the famous cursed 27-year-old artist like Jim Morrison, Jimi Hendrix, Kurt Cobain, and late Amy Winehouse. But tempered, integrated with angry and less melancholy experiences, it can be the beginning of rebirth and intriguing vitality. It is a journey, says Paula, between perdition and rebirth that still fascinates us. Even certain extreme lyrics are not a sign, in Paula's opinion, of surrender to violence, but can provide a possibility of processing anxious and violent depressive experiences without acting them out. Repetitiveness creates constancy, reassurance, containment of anxiety, and the illusion of control. If nothing changes too abruptly, nothing is unattainable. Music is so mediating. It favors the creation of intermediate areas, as Winnicott may say, and can help to dislodge depressive and suicidal fantasies without the need to act them out. If I can think them or represent them musically, I will not be forced to harm myself or someone else. Hopefully. This is why it will never die. This is why it will always accompany our lives, and hopefully also those of our children, grandchildren, and patients. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Massimo De Mari. Really, really interesting topic. Now, okay, Monica Bomba, are you ready to go? To start? Please share your video. Go.
Yeah, there we go. There we go. Hello, everybody, and thank you for this invitation. My task today is to present 4 articles from No Garden dedicated to music and adolescence, whose authors are Cristiano Lombardo, Silvia Mondini, Caterina Olivotto, and myself. I'm not aimed to be exhaustive of all the content presented in the 4 papers. I will focus on one of the theoretical questions that all 4 of them reflect upon. So, while entering the second process of separation and individuation, how does the adolescent transit from a state of undifferentiation to differentiation, and what is the role played by music in this process? Music has always been a true calling for many teenagers, and one of the reasons is that every pre-adolescent and adolescent is a bit like a character in search of an author, needing strong models with whom they can identify to exorcise the anxieties and insecurities inherent in the growth process. Moreover, Generation Z, today adolescents, is facing a time of big changes, among others wars, ecological and economic crisis, pandemic, and the progress of the appendicular functions provided by technology in human life. All this can exert a considerable pressure on the growth of new generations. In response, Generation Z seems to oppose a contrary force, a return to the primitive and original to reclaim a personal path of subjectivation. The search for individuation is preceded by exploration of the pre-individual, the collective, the connective tissue of relationships by posing in the undifferentiated. Youth culture suggests that each of us carries something inside that goes beyond individuation, surpasses boundaries, and connects us all to a larger dimension, what Freud defined the oceanic feeling in civilization and its discontents. In my opinion, it is through music that the adolescent and the group go through and then emerge from these states. Music, thus, would have a function as a transitional evolutionary handrail, as a cradle and midwife for the young adult's mind. No, sorry, I don't know what happened. Well.
Okay, go on.
Yes, I'm trying.
You cannot enlarge it too much.
Okay. Yes, I know, but this happened. I don't know how to do differently. So
you can still go. Don't worry.
Nowadays, the trap movement worldwide represents a musical universe into which a multitude of adolescents from all continents pour themselves. While the rhythm and the vocal flow generate an immersive sound, often described as hypnotic and alienating, language undergoes a process of deconstruction. Moreover, in trap, the contents, whether lyrical or political, typical of the rap phrases, no longer matter, but rather the sensory and dreamlike experience that the lyrics with their sounds promote. As Marruego, a Moroccan Italian trapper state, trap is mostly composed of keywords and the artist limits himself to writing through images. Trap, the music of the suburbs, seems to descend to more archaic, even pre-verbal levels of symbolization. Regarding the archaic, represented in trap language, in some songs, very fast flows depict the object, understood as that which disturbs an identity, a system, or an order, that which does not respect borders, places, and rules, giving voice to anger, claims, violence, and the desire for social revenge. Trap thus becomes a space of immersion in the undifferentiated that allows adolescents to exclude parental generation while dreaming and freely interpreting relational plots, as well as getting in contact with emotions and feelings such as the fear of adult loneliness, the anger of losing childhood. Moreover, adolescents seem to mirror themselves in their music. This also consists of a particular way of dressing, moving, talking, and being together with peers. The music stars become idols and are loved and emulated. We could think, as Cristiano Lombardo suggests in his article, that very archaic imitative psychic mechanisms are at work, both individually and in groups, which support a process of mirroring, fostering a sense of belonging to the group, while at the same time separating from older generation. Eugenio Gaddini, an Italian psychoanalyst, studied the imitative processes and observed them being the precursor of introjection and identification processes at the very early stages of life. He defined the process of imitation to be as a mechanism of psychosensory activity. Self realizes a magical identity with the object. According to Edith Jacobson, observations of infants, the child begins very early to perceive, respond to, and imitate the gestures, inflections of voice, and other visible and audible affective manifestations of the mother. In addition to the affect motor imitations mutually occurring in the mother-child pair, these observations introduce the fundamental dimensions of sound. Sorry, I cannot read. The primitive inflection of the maternal voice, which the infant has already learned to recognize in utero, might be perceived by the infant much more in its semiotic component, close to the musical register in terms of melody, rhythm, and prosody, rather than in its semantic component. The so-called motherese is co-created as a very heterogeneous set of sounds and onomatopoeic expressions destined to become the exclusive dialect of the mother-child pair. Psychosensory mechanisms like imitation, although gradually replaced during development by more evolved and integrated functioning, would never completely abandon the psyche. When an adolescent falls for a type of music or rock star, those affiliative mirroring dynamics might reoccur, weaving the listening to music with the affective matrix of the individual and their group of friends. Another way of lingering in the undifferentiated to return to the origins and start anew as an original individual with one's own identity is illustrated by Silvia Mondini, who presents Billie Eilish and her hypnotic and dreamy music. Billie creates a special bond with her brother, who, in the early part of her musical career, is an essential companion in her creative activity. They appear together in a bond where one is identical to the other in mutual mirroring. Mondini suggests that they are bound in a narcissistic double. A being of similar nature to the object, devoid of any different connotation, represents an interface between the self and the other, the bridge between narcissism and object relations, offering the adolescent a middle way that avoids a too radical confrontation with the issue of separation and allows for the transitory suspension of the threat of disappearance of self and object. The dreamy music of Billie's voice seems to invite the listener to lose themselves in it, entering a double bubble. As in Everything I Wanted, where the calm rhythm of the song and the video of Billie and the brother drowning in the ocean hand in hand make one imagine a return to a warmth contrasts with the depiction of a suicide, suggesting a tension between an evolving time and a static one, a struggle to progress while feeling anchored to the past. This dream logic might also hint at a desire to break free from the double and the ideal to prevent a metaphorical fall. The oceanic feeling characterized also the 60s and the 70s with the big rock concerts like Woodstock, as well as the movements such as the Flower Children of the 60s, whose philosophy of peace and love among brothers and sisters is based on a sense of belonging to nature and to the whole. Olivotto suggests that in rock, where rebellion, transgression, and intergenerational and sexual differences are even more pronounced than in other types of music, another important evolutionary element that lives in the music is the differentiating drive of Oedipus. Bonfiglio writes, "It is the cracks in the early mirroring processes that become evident with growth that make it necessary to create one's own self-image and bring out differences and incompatibilities. And Oedipus's effort is aimed at understanding his origin and acquiring his own identity through a process of differentiation." There is another aspect that bursts forth powerfully in rock songs and performances, both past and present, indicating that the soul of Oedipus is at play. It is the presence and emphasis given to the body in the fullness of its sensual, exciting, and erotic explosion. According to Olivotto, this trend complements Oedipus by structuring the ego, narcissism, and identifications horizontally among peers. Thus, the peer group becomes a three-dimensional space-time where these two axes, the horizontal axis of the siblings and the vertical Oedipal axis, converge and evolve. What makes music capable of creating a sufficiently safe and reliable space of illusion and immersion in the undifferentiated, prerequisite for the Oedipal drive or rebellion and self-definition? I propose that it is the very experience of music which characterizes its living itself that allows adolescents to safely experience the sinking into the pre-individual. They are preserved from being dispersed into the rarefied, horizontal, timeless, and indefinite space by the other dimension of music, by its finiteness. Like a fractal, notes and pauses, beats and pieces are finite. What begins in music ends shortly thereafter, ensuring the possibility of re-emerging to the individual dimension. Each ending, however, can be followed by a new beginning and a diving back into the flow. Music is the art of the hope of resonance, of bringing back at every moment the out of time, at every moment the beginning that one hears beginning, and beginning again, writes Jean-Luc Nancy. It is the experience of infinite, undifferentiated, that consists, without confusing and without distorting itself, with that of the finiteness of the composition, with the experience of self-definition and differentiation that music holds in the same moment. It is this coexistence of shore and sea, of limit and infinite, while music strips away oneself from what we already know, that relying on the illusion of continuity of existence generates a creative tension and the ability to dream, giving rise to the discovery of oneself.
Thank you very much, Monica. Thank you very much to all of you. Really interesting because you said if we start considering rock music, jazz music, blues music, grunge, trap, rap, a sort of art, maybe, perhaps, the psychoanalysis could be interested in it. Because from now on, or just until yesterday, we have a lot of literature about psychoanalysis and classical music. And today we started talking about rock music and adolescence. Rock music is a general term. We are not talking about only rock music, but we are talking, I think, about modern music. So, in the meantime, we collect the questions. I would like to highlight some few questions for you about your topic. The first one is about modern music. Modern music can be seen as a combination of three forms of arts: writing, the lyrics, okay, music, and singing. So do you think this aspect plays a role in the close relationship between young people, adolescents, and music? Who can answer? Writing lyrics and singing, modern music. One of you.
I will start, but I will not. The first things that comes to my mind is that those three different kind of expression comes from different level of the psyche. For example, the writing, the lyrics come from the conscience, and the conscious. Sorry, and I think that the voice is something that comes with the bodily listening as well. So we have to listen the body, and this is a different level, and I think it's really interesting. I quite like, and I've got to say, I super like classical music, but when someone sings, happens to me, for example, to feel goosebumps. and this really is a bodily experience. And and about the music itself, I think that this contemporary music got a different way to use the rhythm. And as we saw, rhythm is a very important thing. And for example, I quite love to go to reggae concerts, because at the end I've got the feeling that everybody, the hearts of everybody beats at the same pace. And this is very interesting as well. So I think that is three different levels that all together bring the psyche together, and helps a lot to feel that we can connect. And especially I think that an experience that in classical music is not very common, but in rock music it is to go to wide concert altogether. Wide concert are really an experience, indie experience, where all these coming together, it's, I think, and I think it's very interesting. And when the patient told us their experience with the modern music and going to the concert, I think that they tell us a lot about the body, the mind, and the hope to be connected with the other ones, which I think at the moment is really a problem.
May I add one thing, Rosa, to what Anna has just said? I think you missed, nowadays, you missed an important thing in music, which is the imagine. It has become more and more important during the years. When I was an adolescent, and unavoidably we might talk about our personal experience, there was no video, nothing. You can only see photographs, pictures on the records, maybe, but there were no videos. Rarely concerts. You can see live the singers, the bands during the years, and you could just focus on the music, and not everyone is interested in the voice, for example. In my experience, I always prefer to hear vocal songs rather than only instrumental songs, but that was my experience. As Anna said, there are three different ways, but I think that nowadays more and more important has become the imagine, how the singer dressed up, how they behave, the histories they made on social, and I guess the music. I'm afraid that music goes on sometimes, not always, naturally, or on a second level. There was a question here. Maybe I saw about Taylor Swift, and it was exactly what. No, sorry, I just happened to say.
No, wait. We go to the Q&A after.
Yeah, but it was exactly what I was saying. In my experience, Taylor Swift is quite famous, but I can't remember any song from her. But she's very, very present to me for her image.
So maybe
I could
go.
I can add something too. Well, I was the one who wrote the paper on trap, and I couldn't deepen too much the topic because we had just a few minutes to talk about it. But what I wrote is that in trap, for example, language is really deconstructed. So there are songs that are difficult to follow because there might be, there are no words, sounds, and sounds that are incomprehensible. So it's not all trap like this, of course, but this is just to highlight. And also they use mumbling, this talking in a way that it's difficult to understand what they say, or rather using different language put together, merged together. So what I want to say is that sometimes in this in the trap music, which is something that is followed by a universe of adolescents right now, the writing, the lyrics might not be so important. Of course they are, because there are some parts of the songs that are sang in the concerts by all the people there, but what the adolescents say is that the contents are not so important as the feeling of singing all the songs together. So there is a sort of there is a shift of attention from the contents to the feelings that one and the sensations that one can feel during the listening of this music.
And okay, so we have maybe 5 minutes more to talk between you about trauma. You said something about trauma because music often has a holding function for teenagers. Okay, we listen to it many hours a day, but can this listening be the same holding to the artist is a hard question, I think. But I'm thinking of the many traumatic situation you nominated before that rock singers have been through. For example, this the rock music, in this case, the group, is a form of holding for the artist too. One of you. Very hard question.
Yeah, this is a field of interest of our colleague Vittorio, who might answer for us. But I agree that he has been writing a lot about traumatic experiences in the artists and music artists. But I think that music might be a way to face traumatic experiences, to try to elaborate them, and to find anyway. I always say that we can distinguish music from psychoanalysis, because music is psychoanalysis, as deeply psychoanalytic. To make an example, when we think about a famous track by a modern composer like John Cage, who was titled 4 minutes and 33 seconds. It's a track where you can't hear anything. It's 4 minutes and 33 seconds of silence. And the music of this track is whatever. It's the music outside in the place where this track is played, but it's mostly inside. Is what comes from the preconscious and I guess the unconscious at the end. So music might be a way, not always successful, as we know. Many artists, many traumatic stories in music artists doesn't end very well, as I said before. We know a lot of cases that ended dramatically. But it might be, and if I may say something briefly about how music might be useful and fundamental use in prison with people who inmates who have had this traumatic histories, which ended with crimes, with committing crimes, and musical activities in prison are much appreciated by everyone because they can give the possibility to reflect, to make something come from the unconscious, project it into music, or music helps to reach. So I will stop here. Just a few thoughts.
I'd like to say something about the question, the groups and the trauma. And I think that I had the chance to study a lot with Vittorio, which is one of our colleagues, because we both love Pink Floyd. And as everybody knows, one of the band basically get insane and had a breakdown and had to leave the group. And we tried, me and Vittorio with another friend, we tried to go through the discography, and especially The Dark Side of the Moon, which has been basically one of the main record that they made after Syd Barrett left the group. And what we found, it was really that the group was trying to elaborate the trauma, not only for the left of the friend, but to be exposed on his delirium and the chaos that it brought to the group. And that was really like chilling for us to see how the lyrics was really talking about the experience of being so close to the chaos. So that is a particular experience, I guess. But at the same time, I think that groups bring people together with different traumas together, and this melt experience. And when they're lucky enough and good enough, they can use those to make good music for us as well. But as we know, Sid never recovered, and they made how they could. I think that is an example.
Yeah, thank you. Monica, would you say something, or you have another question?
No, go ahead.
I go? Okay. No, because by these questions, I would like to keep together the first question in the Q&A about cellular drift, and the last one about the adulthood and the adolescent. Do you think that teenagers' choice of music is determined by a need to distinguish themselves from the adult world? This is the sense of the meaningful of the last question. Or is there also a need to distinguish their identity from their peers, or to reaffirm stronger their identity by their peers? The trap music is sometimes really a way to distinguish themselves from the adulthood.
Yes, especially that. I think it depends also by for the age of the adolescent, because in the early adolescence, the need to differentiate from adult parents, etc., is much more much stronger. While later on, the need to differentiate also from the other peers becomes as strong as the need to differentiate from parents. Maybe there is an inversion, I think, in these processes. So, but in trap music, as I stated, it's prevails the share of an undifferentiated atmosphere. So it's much more the being part of a whole, a feeling of being part of a wide group, of a crowd of people you do not know, but you know that they do share the same feelings, the same difficulties, etc. So this is the main aspect the main aspects I found out in my research on this kind of music.
So, but if we think about Taylor Swift and a lot of other artists like her, so maybe I think this is a way to affirm their identity by their peers, not against something, but by their.
Yes.
What do you think about?
Well, there is a formal identification, of course, like they become a model for what they say, for the kind of emotion they make, help adolescents express. For example, we cannot say something without talking about a personal experience. I've been grown up with a kind of a genre of music who was called rock progressive, which is a rock that comes from classical music particularly. And there were sweet 20 minutes, a song lasted 20 minutes, a lot of the lyrics were about mythology or topics, general topics. But in that period of time, I felt really a big identification with this kind of music, because it makes me dream of something that I couldn't imagine otherwise. Nowadays, adolescents have, I think, a different situation. They have the chance to see, to have so many informations on the world around, that they need maybe to have a music that calm the anxiety, that may be something that they can identify, much more simple, easier to listen. Talking about identification, but if we talk about the conflict with the adults, I think there is some question. I think that music, as always, is reason, because in every era, if we look at the past, before there was rock, then the punk, then the rap and trap, and also in classical music there have been many rupture. You have to kill your father if you want to go ahead. So music is very helpful in this.
Okay, I collect questions from Q&A. We have a lot of very interesting questions, and at the same time, we go deeply inside your very interesting paper. Anna, someone asked about the sound, the role of the sound for the adolescents, for in session. You mentioned musical rêverie. And could you tell us more about it? Do you have any little hints of how we trace it in the sessions, for example?
Just an easy question.
Yeah, very easy.
I will ask help to Di Benedetto, who was the psychoanalyst who were talking about acoustic rêverie. He said something which I really consider useful. He said, we've got to listen a lot and train ourselves to listen, because he says that acoustic rêverie is a kind of imagination, and we used to train ourselves, even if we don't know, to train ourselves with the imagination, with images. And we don't do the same with the sounds. And he says, if we keep listening to the tone of the voice, we keep attention to the sounds into the sessions, into the studio. If we start to realize how the voice of the patient changes, suddenly we could find some ideas in ourselves. We could connect to other voices, other sounds that we heard. And this kind of imaginary comes and become a true reverie. It's not something that we do, obviously, with like a muscularity decision to imagine something. We've got to train ourselves to keep listening, to keep using ourselves to connect sounds. And I think this is really useful. It's just a little tip.
Yes, I go on with the question in the Q&A. There is another really important. Someone talks about the Clash. Do you remember the group, the Clash? He said something I said many times about the Avenged Sevenfold, or the Green Days, when some group come back again, this is not the group of our adolescents, and they are not adolescents. So this colleague posted this. Many as fun may be provided, not just a static object. This group, this comeback to the scene is not a static object. It's something in evolution they growing up with us is a sort of evolving identification in real time. So I'm curious because we are talking about adolescence and music and the music for adolescents, but we are not adolescents. So we can say something about this. As adulthood, not as adolescent, okay? Massimo, what do you think about?
Yes, I was thinking about the what I was saying before about the rock progressive, because that genre, the musical genre, evolved actually, and evolved together with my life. I mean, thinking about those artists when I was an adolescent, and now I find myself struck by the fact that they were, as our colleague says, not much older than me, just a few years. I might even say they were older brothers, something like. And actually, it happened for me. To say the truth, I'm a big Genesis fan, and I grew up with Genesis, Gentle Giant, all the rock progressive, Jethro Tull, and King Crimson, Pink Floyd, and so on and on. And they changed the approach to music in the years. To say an example, to do an example, I don't know if anyone know what I'm talking about, but anyway, the former singer of Genesis was Peter Gabriel. Peter Gabriel took a completely different way from the original band, and I find myself following him rather than staying with the old band that became more music style, more pop style, while Peter Gabriel went on researching and doing some more complex music. But anyway, I agree with the colleague. There is an evolution, and we grow up with our models.
Monica, would you say something?
No, I agree, and I thank this participant for this question this comment, because I think it's really important to highlight this point of so that it's not just the group, but also the music, which is not a static object, but something that grows and develops, as we can see in the music scene from 1900 and now, how things have changed and reached, and things have been lost. And so there are, I think it's very important to also to try to study these changes as we try to, in order to understand also the adolescent movement and development nowadays differently maybe from how it was in the past, but also to find out universal aspects that were true in the past and also true now. So, which doesn't mean that the object is static, but it's that a dynamic object may respond to some needs in different ways during the different era.
And okay, someone asks if the paper, our journal is in English. No, our journal is in Italian, and we are thinking about to do an English version. But if you can download the single PDF. You can put it on Google Translator, and you have the English version. Maybe it's not the perfect English version, but maybe you have. You can read what we are talking about today. So and someone asked.
Can I say, Rosa? Can I say that
yeah.
the article are online as well? So if you've got devices that made the translation, so on, you can read it. Not in an amazing English, but they are online as well.
So but we will work on an English version. We will.
Yes, thank you. And another question is about the puberty and the libidinal life, the desire, and the music, the role of the music. In this case, I think we should think of the emotional system, music, and emotionality, and they are connected. There are a strong connection between emotional system and the music. So I think the music can go through the puberty, accompanying our children to the adolescence. But there's another very important question. So I would like to.
Sorry, Rosa, can I say just a super quick thing
Yes.
about this about puberty? In our work, there is an interview that I made to a colleague, and the interview came exactly from this question, basically, because I was watching Big Mouth, which is a TV series, and I was really into the beginning of the series. I don't know if any one of you have seen it, but there is this song from Black Sabbath, which is "I'm going through changes," and there are those little child who goes through the puberty, and all the series is about the puberty, and these children become monstrous through the puberties. And I asked to a colleague of us to speak about adolescence, puberty, and the monstrosity. And if any of you would love to read it, he said really interesting things, which basically are, it depends. If it comes out something more libidinal, you will have the monster of sex. And in the music as well. If it comes out to be like more like a death drive, you will have really dark music, and the monstrous is you. And it was about the puberty.
Thank you very much. There are a lot of questions, so I would like to link some questions together. One is about unconscious and improvisation. Maybe Massimo can say something, now comparing the unconscious with improvisation in session or in music. And another comparison between unconscious, preconscious, and what Anna called the listening gaps. Maybe between with these two questions, we keep together a lot of questions in chat. Okay, maybe Massimo first, and Anna then, and then I have another question for Monica. Go.
I would answer very briefly to both questions. I try. Improvisation, I think that improvisation is very one of the topic which is much closer to the concept of psychoanalysis, because we have the same characteristic in the psychoanalytic session and in the during the performance of a solo during a song, improvisation, like we call it improvisation in jazz music particularly, but also in rock blues and rock and roll and many other, maybe not in pop music, but in many. Mozart was a big improviser. When you improvise in music, you have a frame which is made by a fixed frame, a rational frame made by the score, the succession of chords, the melody, the given melody, what's in the key, and so on and on. And when you improvise, you must take this frame as a referral. You know, I've been talking with many musicians about it, and also with colleagues. You know, when you start, you know how to start, and when you have some experience, you know how to finish a solo. But in the middle, you don't know at all where you're going. Maybe you're going also dissonant from the fixed frame, and this moment is directly connected to the preconscious, and I believe also with the unconscious of your musical life, your musical experiences, your personal life, the context where you are. In a performance live, you have the people listening to you. There's a climate, a certain atmosphere. There are emotions. There is a feeling with the audience, a feeling with your musician you're playing with, and every solo is different. And you actually don't know. You free associate as you free associate during a psychoanalytic session, when you have this fixed frame, which is the setting, as we know, I won't describe it because we well know what it is, and you can free associate and you don't know what's happening until there is an interpretation that tells you, oh, you were thinking about this, you have been talking about this, you never realized, but now you can see it. I think that's very, very interesting what happens in improvisation. And briefly about the unconscious and the preconscious, I will, someone asked for the clinical vignette. I will describe a very, very quick clinical vignette with a patient in analysis who was very, very, in a very difficult moment of his life. He was very anguished, and there was this heavy silence in the room. And as I said before, the silence, as we know, in psychoanalytic session is music, because every sound, every every sound that you can hear, rumor is another thing, is important. It comes from, can stimulate some thoughts from the unconscious. And in this anguishing moment, there was a music coming from outside, who was playing with the piano, I don't know where from, who was the title track, one of the songs of the cartoon, The Aristocats, as you know, Cruella de Mon, da-da-da-da-da, ba-da-ba-da-da, and I felt, oh no, not now. I can't imagine what the patient is feeling now. It will be maybe a provocation. It will be angry with me. And there was another silence. Then he said, this piano made me think about my adolescence when I started playing piano, and my mother forced me to play piano, so on and on and on and on. I think that's an example of how music can work in psychoanalysis.
Anna?
About gaps in listening, I try to ask to myself where the unheard comes from, and I was really intrigued about the importance of being considering all the three levels: unconscious, preconscious, and conscious. And while I was studying and asking to myself in the clinic and other things, I think we should take 4 different sources of the unheard, and from the bottom to the upper. And for example, there are some things that they are unheard, never heard before, because they never became a trace in the psyche of the patients. Let's think about, for example, the sweet voice of a mother for a person that never had the chance to meet the mother, for example. And there are another level where basically the experience, you felt something, you heard something, but it didn't come to find a way, the pathway to come to the conscious. And we are full of this kind of heard experience. And sometimes happens in session, I can feel something, but I don't know, people say, for example. And after a while they say, I remember this, and this comes out. Another different kind of unheard are the things that are in the preconscious, and they are the easiest one for me, for example, because sometimes me and a patient, we keep saying, what is this? And easily comes out what this could be, for example. And then there is the difficult part, the part that I studied a lot in my article, and there are the things that they are being repressed. We are full of unheard things because the uncanny is the uncanny, and we don't want it at all. And I think that there are a lot of gaps in listening based on the uncanny.
Thank you. There is a question here about the adolescent, and someone, Luke Hansley, asked, can we really generalize about adolescents music now that we are in an era when they have access to the whole of recorded music history? I think it's not the same. think about music, adolescence, rock music, and so on, thinking about the music history of the rock. I think we need to approach the adolescent in the here and now of their music. Maybe, Monica, you can say more about this.
Yes, I don't think it's about generalization, of course. It's each one of us, the 12 analysts of us, did deepen an aspect of the relationship between music and adolescence from different points of view. And so it's not about a generalization, but a way of understanding the the adolescent development in nowadays through the listening of their music. In my case, if I can say something about me, myself, I mean, I have two kids who are both adolescents and they both listen to trap music. So that's the reason why I started to try to understand a bit more about this music. And I think that it is important to try to not generalize, but to try to reach them where they are, and to trying to listen to the music with their way of listening, of course, as far as we can. We are not omnipotent, we are not adolescent anymore, as someone said, but also taking the going back to our own experiences during our own adolescence. I think we can actually feel similarities and also differences, and the differences sometimes are so rich to let us understand a bit more about the development of the adolescents today. Of course, this is a generalization, yes, but I think it's important to start from some aspects like this, and then deepen with the patients and with the individuals.
Okay, we have only 3 minutes, so we cannot approach all the questions. But the last one is, do you think people with synesthesia have an evolved psychoanalytic psyche? I changed this question. Maybe one of you can answer to this, then we go to the end of the webinar. Writing a whole book about rock music for fans like you, some of whom are musicians themselves, was a great experience for all of us, for you. Would it have been the same? Would it have been the same if you weren't fans of the genre or would have been a musician yourself? It has been the same book? One of you. We have 2 minutes. Massimo, the editor of the book.
Difficult to say, because we are not. Every one of us, I think it's difficult. In some of the questions, there were questions about also classical music, other genre. I guess that every one of us has its own genre where we have been grown up, and I found in it something to help to build his emotional experience, and to build, I think, I won't say too much, but to build his personality. Every one of us has his own personality traits, musical personality traits, I would say. There are a lot of adolescents who play classical music, who study opera singers on classical music, and they found in them that the same thing that the other find in rap music and trap music, consolation, anxiety, and also possibility of expressing their aggressiveness. Everyone has his own genre. It would have been different. I think we wouldn't be able to write this paper.
Okay, thank you. If we were in the 60s or in the 70s, I will conclude this webinar saying peace and love and rock music. Now we cannot say this. So thank you very much for today. And I think if, as you said before, Massimo, if we think at rock music, at modern music as a form of art, maybe we can find it more and more interesting to talk about in psychoanalysis. So thank you very much. And I launch, Augustine, next webinar. Okay, next webinar is about innovations in child psychoanalysis. The webinar will be in Spanish in July, 26th July at 4 p.m. London time. So you can find more information on the IPA page. And if you have more questions, you can write, you can email us your question. Sorry if we could not respond, give an answer to all the questions in chat. Thank you very much, Massimo. Thank you very much, Anna and Monica. And above all, thank you very much,
thank you.
Mariano Rupertus, for this group webinar today. Thank you to everybody.
Thank you very much.
Everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.